So good morning to you all. My talk is not really dedicated to wireless and mobile communication, but intends to show how the recent developments that led to powerful telecommunication systems could be beneficial to other fields, in particular, neuroscience. As you know, graphs and codes are essential tools in telecommunications, especially for mobile communications. Surprisingly, graphs and codes are not considered in neuroscience. And yet, information and communication are the first concepts to master if we aim at devising a theory of the brain, a kind of mental information theory. Therefore, graphs and codes have an important role to play in this story. Information in the brain is still terra incognita. And we must get rid of any complex or shyness faced with the biological complexity of the brain if we want to tackle the problem at the informational level. For instance, we do not invoke Schrödinger or Shockley equations to specify a computational architecture in an electronic integrated circuit. It's all the same for the brain. The tremendous physico-chemical complexity of the brain may be abstracted when trying to take in its informational organization. So, through my talk today, I would like to awaken in you the interest, the strong interest that I took in deepening the links that can actually be made between our familiar system tools, codes and graphs, and the brain. Well, this work was done with two PhD students of Télécom Bretagne, Vincent Grippon and Jiran Jiang. Jiran Jiang is a Chinese student. Precisely, our studies aim at identifying clearly, deepen, and exploit the strong analogies and antinomies as well that can be found between the structures and properties of the cerebral cortex and those of modern error correcting decoders studied and used in the communication field, namely turbocodes and low-density parity check LDPC codes. Actually, this project originated from the parallel that can be drawn between these two figures. On the left, you can see a very stylized LDPC decoder. An LDPC decoder is the most distributed version of message passing decoders, whereas a turbo decoder is the most compact because there are only two components, two codes in the turbo code. And this decoder contains two types of processors, the sigma and the plus. The sigmas represent what's called the variable processors, and the plus, the parity processors. The role of variable processors is to aggregate different pieces of information, which are called extrinsic pieces of information that are provided by several parity processors working on parity constraints. Of course, there is no parity relation, no algebra in the brain. But neurons, on the right, can be seriously likened to aggregators according to the integrate and fire classical model of McCulloch and Pitts, for instance. So we can associate or liken variable processors or aggregators and neurons. So the main question now is, if we assume that the neocortex, this very loopy graph, behaves like a decoder, what is the equivalent of the parity relations and of the parity processors in the neural network? Actually, when considering the cerebral problem this way, we are just following the very relevant advice of Richard Dawkins that appears below. He said, well, a long time ago, if you want to understand the brain, don't look at the cells and at the biology. Use information technology. And this is my motivation. As I said previously, there are strong analogies and also antinomies between a distributed decoder and the neocortex. They are there. I will not comment each of them. Just one, which is strong. The reality of the unique thought in the cortex and the unique decoding fixed point of a distributed decoder. In both cases, among an astronomical number of possible solutions. And this invites us to revisit the theory of neural networks with the help of recent and powerful distributed coding and decoding principles, turbo or belief propagation. When looking at the informational properties of the different parts of the encephalon, with the background of information theory and architectures, we have to distinguish strongly between two very different families of neurons. On one end, what's called the ancestral brain, that is the reptilian and limbic brains, which are basically feed-forward circuits from sensors to motors with some functional feedback. And on the other end, the last step of the evolution, the neocortex. The neocortex, which was not vital to primitive species, but no more lethal, has been exploited by life to store information and to enhance the cognitive abilities of animals. But contrary to the first brains, reptilian and limbic, the neocortex had no crucial reason to grow as a feed-forward circuit. And it did so in a way that neurons have become something different from simple signal relays. They acquired the status of nodes in a recurrent graph. And actually, this point allows us to use concepts and properties of the graph theory. So we all agree, no parity relation in the neocortex, which can be regarded as a very loopy graph. we have to find a code in this graph. We have to find a graphical property which offers error correction. And I'm going to present now this free code that any graph offers. In an undirected graph, a click, it's an English word, it's also the same in French, click. A click is a set of nodes such that each one is connected to the others. A click with C nodes is called a C click. We can define the minimum Hamming distance, which is familiar to us, d-min, between elements of this subset of C clicks as the minimum number of edges that differ, at least, between two clicks. This minimum distance d-min is given in the case of only one node or vertex being different. So it's easy to write the minimum Hamming distance. It's twice C minus 1. You have here the example of a 5-click, 2 5 clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. You can observe that there are 3 edges, twice 3 edges, 6 edges separating these 2 clicks. Now, what about the coding rate? The coding rate, R, is the ratio between the minimum number of edges that are necessary to specify a particular click. It's given there. It's the integer part, what's called the floor, of C plus 1 divided by 2. And this has to be divided by the number of edges of the click, of course, and it's C choose 2. That is C times C minus 1 divided by 2. For C even, for instance, the coding rate is equal to 1 over C minus 1. Now, you know that a code is specified by the minimum distance, the coding rate, but the power of the code is given by the product of these two parameters. It's called the merit factor, or the mean, and you can observe that this merit factor is equal to 2. This value being greater than 1 means that a click can be regarded as a code word of a good error-correcting code. For instance, by comparison, the well-known extended Hamming code, the 844 Hamming code, has also a merit factor equal to 2. Note that the symbols of the code words are not the nodes, but they are the edges. What is really important in the brain is not the neurons, it's the connections. So the click, which has then an inherent discrimination capability, and which also is of highly biological possibility. There are more and more papers about clicks in the brain in the biological literature. So this will be our elementary brick in the constructions of original, let's say, telecommunication-inspired neural models. This is a very original result published just this year. So any graph, this is very interesting, any graph, mathematical, electronic, biological, artificial, natural, any graph offers this property. We can benefit from a code in any graph, provided that we consider code words as clicks in the network. But the number of C clicks in a graph with n nodes being potentially very high, this offers theoretically a plentiful memory space to store messages. But when trying to store messages as clicks in a graph without any precaution, it quickly happens that many false clicks, that is, non-learned clicks, multiply, and they are resting on the edges of the true clicks. You can imagine that writing many clicks in a network, useful clicks, it will appear false clicks, many false clicks of any size will appear in the graph. In order to avoid this secondary effect, we have proposed to organize the network in such a way that only clicks with a given size C, here the example is C equal to 4, can be learned and recalled, and that the number of false clicks is kept low. So the network is split into clusters. Here we have 4 clusters. And within each cluster, a local sparse coding rule is introduced. And this coding rule is this one. Only one node per cluster is authorized to be active when learning a message. Just one node, one active node in each cluster. This node is called a funnel because it's not really, not necessarily a neuron. It's a group of neurons that biologists call a microcolon. And while we use the term funnel as an analogy with the single light that can be seen in the darkness of its vicinity. So this is very plausible. We are also working with some biologists, and well, they say this seems to be a network of microcolons gathered in colons. The colon here is a cluster, and the network itself, the group of clusters, is what's called a macrocolon. Of course, you can imagine that the main parameter in the design of such networks is the density. If the density is too close to 1, that is, if all the edges exist in the network is overloaded. And it cannot learn, it cannot restitute messages. Here you have the formula giving the density. I will not comment it, but it's very easy to establish. And this is a parameter to a very important parameter in the design of such networks. Well, we have introduced in this network a local code, which is not very famous. I don't think you have heard about this kind of codes. Well, and they are described in a quite old book by McWilliams and Sloan, The Theory of Error Correcting Codes. And just 2 pages are devoted to this kind of codes. It's called a constant weight code. And the parameters of a constant weight codes are the length, the number of ones in the code word. Here we have only one, so it's a weight one constant code, constant weight code, and also the minimum distance. This code has drawbacks and advantages. Drawback, the minimum distance of this code is only 2. Because if we change one code word to another, we have just one becoming a 0, and a 0 becoming a 1 in the second one. So, not very interesting as a single code, a code used alone. But we know that weak codes can be gathered, linked, to form a concatenated code, distributed, like an LDPC code, to offer very good error-correcting capabilities. So this is not really a strong drawback. What about the coding rate? If we have L bits in the code word, we have this code word is able to carry log 2 of L bits if we consider a binary alphabet. And the length of the code word is L. So the ratio is log 2 of L over L. It's a very low code rate. These are, well, two apparent, possible drawbacks for the use of this code as a code alone. But this code are also very nice properties. It's the most parsimonious code we could contemplate. For instance, associating this weight 1 constant weight code with an on-off keying modulation, no energy to transmit zeros, and energy 1 to transmit 1, it's the most thrifty, parsimonious code we could use. The second, so from the biological point of view, is very, let's say, plausible. You know that energy is a very important parameter for life. The second interest of this code is that it's very easily decoded. If we consider an additive noise or a positive multiplicative noise, the rules is very simple. You have just to implement the winner-take-all decoding. The winner-take-all means that you look at the different symbols, received symbols, you choose the one that had the maximum magnitude, and you say, well, the one is there. The one of the code word is there, so you have the code word, and all the other values are 0. So this a neural network can be devised as a concatenation of codes. Local codes are constant weight codes, and the concatenation, the links between the local codes, like in a turbo or DPC code, are established through another code, which is the click code that I described just before. And this, the global code is very powerful. We have compared this organization of a neural network given by coding, the coding principles to classical neural networks. Probably the most famous classical neural network is the Hopfield network. I will not give details about this today. Some progress have been made from this Hopfield network, but they are not really consequent. And here we have, we use the neural network as an associative memory. What is the experiment? We consider 8 clusters, each cluster having 256 nodes, so funnels. So the considered messages have 8 times log 2 of 256, that is 64 bits. And we ask the network to learn messages up to 50,000 messages. And we can observe that up to 15,000 messages, the behavior is very good. That is, the network, I will not give any detail about the decoding procedure, but it's a classical message passing procedure. Local codes, global code. Local codes, global code, and it's also iterative. Here we have 4 iterations. Up to 15,000 messages, so the network is able to restitute, to recall the learned message, even if half the message is not known. So it's typically the property of an associative memory. You give a part of the message, and you ask the network to give all the message. This is about 250 times what the Hopfield network is able to do. Diversity is the number of messages that the network is able to handle. The number of bits that the message, the network is able to store is 20 times that of the Hopfield network. And the efficiency is also 20 times that the classical one. The efficiency is the ratio between the number of bits we can store in the network and the number of bits that are required by the network to run. So the maximum normally is 100%. Normally you cannot store more bits than you use. Well, so this result was very recently published in IEEE Transaction on Neural Networks in July 2011. Well, this is a satisfaction for us because we are supposed to publish in journals like IEEE Transaction on Communications, on Information Theory. And to my knowledge, it's the first time that people coming from this community, information theory, go towards another community, quite different, neuroscience, neural network, to show that if you use error correcting code, you can improve the neural networks by 2 decades, like in telecommunications. We can also use this kind of coded neural networks as classifiers. And here we have done some simulations. For instance, with 4, 6, or 8 clusters, each cluster having this time 512 funnels. So the messages, if they are binary, have a length of 9 C bits. And here, in the abscissa represents the network density, and the ordinate the probability of accepting a random message. What is the problem? You ask the network, the coded network, to learn a lot of messages, and after that, you present a message to this network, and you ask it to answer the question, do you know or not the message? So it's a brutal, very, well, a classification, a simple classification problem. And here, so you have the error rate when you present to the network a message that it has not learned. And we have error rate, well, that are comparable to frame error rates in telecommunications, for instance, that can be very, very, very low. And for instance, with 8 clusters and with a density of 0.8, 0.8, it's quite a high density. That is, nearly all the edges exist in the network. It's nearly overloaded. And you have an error rate of between 10 to the minus 2 and 10 to the minus 3 when you present, this is the probability that the network says, yes, I know this message, whereas it has not learned. And this corresponds to 400,000 messages. 400,000 messages in these networks with only 4,000 nodes. The gain compared with the Hopfield networks is higher than 1,000 in diversity and about 50 in capacity and efficiency. The efficiency in this case is more than 100%. This is very strange. You can store more information in the network that the network uses. And this is a point which is not very well known in information theory and electronics and computer science. In an associative memory, the messages that you store in a network or in the memory are not ordered. The time is lost. You have stored messages, but the network is not able to say, well, this message was acquired before this one. Okay? And if you store, if you lose the time order, you can, if the time order is not crucial, you can store more messages than 100%. So this is not so strange. Well, this is a very, well, seems to us that it's a very innovative theory. Neurons are fundamentally, neurons in the neocortex, not in the primitive brain and the nervous system in general. Neurons, or groups of neurons, are essentially nodes in a graph. And if we use the graph theory, nodes, edges, clicks, etc., we can explain the tremendous ability of the neocortex to store many messages in an easy way. And this is a secondary result of our work. If we can explain this strong ability of the neocortex to store many messages, we use binary connection. Binary connections. A connection exists or not. That would mean that the cerebral memory would be a digital one. But it's not so surprising. Everybody has heard about plasticity and the importance of plasticity, but plasticity is more an activity memory than a memory itself. So we can use plasticity, firing frequency, thresholds, inhibitory signals as additional degrees of freedom for other things that the true memory, attention, vigilance, relevance, short-term memory, etc. Well, up to now, I have presented a theory about coded neural networks able to store many messages, to retrieve them even if they are erased or distorted. But all this was timeless. All this was atemporal. Can we give an answer also for sequences, for messages in which time is very important? The answer is very, very simple. And the answer is, again, given by the graph theory. Replace the clicks with tournaments. What is a tournament in graph theory? A tournament is a click, so each node is connected to the others in this subset, but the edges are oriented. So we replace edges by arrows. So because we use now arrows, the time is natural in the construction because the signal can propagate only in one sense, from one node to another. Well, I have, 15 minutes left, Paul? 10? 10 minutes, okay. So we want to store messages in a graph. We know how to store atemporal or timeless messages and many messages in a graph using clicks. But if we want to learn sequences, we use now arrows instead of edges, non-oriented edges. But we have also a strong constraint. The brain, well, at least the neocortex, is only a graph. It's only a graph. How to avoid ambiguousness in a journey, in a travel, with only graphical tools? If we are able to answer this question, we can learn sequences. And again, the principle is very simple. Use multi-level aiming or time overlapping. You have here on the left a graph, 64 cases, so 64 nodes, and you have a journey indicated by some nodes from A to H. And what is the journey? Well, we don't know. Is it A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, F, G, H, C, D, E? We don't know. It's ambiguous. And we can remove this ambiguousness by using what I call multi-level aiming. We introduce in the graph some additional arrows which say which is the second node to come. For instance, if the travel is ABC, of course we connect A to B, but we connect also A to C. Okay? So we know what is the first node, but we know also what is the second node. And we can, of course, enlarge this principle to the third node, fourth, etc. But here I limit the presentation to only a simple time overlapping. And the ambiguousness disappears. We know that now the journey is A, B, C, F, G, H, etc. So we use here the principle of anticipation, which is very natural in the brain. When you prepare a sentence, or when you sing a song, or say a poem, you anticipate the phonemes. So it's quite plausible. And, well, I will be short on this. We have made some simulation of this kind of structure. We have used a network composed of 50 clusters. Each cluster has 56 funnels. We use a time overlapping with value 20, so a strong anticipation. And we are able to store in this network composed of 50 times 256 nodes. We are able to store 1,080 pieces of music, each having 1,000 notes. One note is given by 16 pitches and 16 possible lengths. And we are able to retrieve the song, well, the music, from just the beginning with an error probability of 10 to the minus 2. This is also unprecedented result that has not been yet published, but we will submit the result very soon. Just, well, what is the explanation of this result? Coding. Again, again, why are we able to explode the classical result of the neural network approach? Because we use coding. We know that coding is very important in telecommunication. The gains are, well, 10, 15, 20 dB. Well, we obtain the same gains in neural networks using this approach. Well, our current studies invoke introducing soft input decoding. Of course, soft input decoding is very familiar to us in telecommunication. So we want our neural networks to be able to recover noisy or blurred messages. We want also to the networks being able to manage to handle variable length messages. We want to devise networks of networks. And also, of course, this is the main objective of our project. We want to introduce cognitive concepts. We want the network to be able to be attentive, filter messages. Is it relevant or not, etc., etc. Well, this is my last slide, my conclusion. What we are doing at Telecom Bretagne is to show that cross-fertilization between information theory, what we have obtained these 20 last years with turbo coding, ADPC coding, and more generally distributed coding, can be used by other fields to improve their machines, especially in neuroscience And we have the aim, the objective to design a machine able to learn millions, let's say billions, messages, situations, and to combine them. This network, I forgot this, the networks I have presented today have a very interesting property. Messages are overlapping. It's not like a classical memory. You store a first message at address 1, second message at address 2, etc. Here, all the messages belong to a network and use the same material. So they use the same nodes, the same ages. They are overlapping. So if you recall a message, this recalling may have a certain influence on neighbors. So you can, let's say, contemplate the possibility to devise cognitive machines. We want also to contribute, we have some partners from neuroscience, to a good understanding of the biological long and short-term memories. Is this approach relevant to the explanation of what the biologists observe? And of course, this is our main, let's say, we are paid for this. It would be very useful to find applications to telecommunications also. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Claude, for perfect timing. I don't know if we probably have time for one or two questions, if there are any questions in the room. Catherine?
Catherine.
Just a micro, please.
Yes, good morning. I'm clearly not an expert at that, but you have compared your results with Hopfield, you said. What about comparing it with the latest neural networks? And because clearly I was looking on the web, they have many new things happening there. So how would it compare?
Yes, this is, of course, a very good question. Hopfield, I think that the Hopfield networks have been proposed in '82, so it's a long time. Okay. Some improvements have been proposed since, especially the Boltzmann machines, also the Bayesian networks. And they are able to improve somewhat diversity and capacity, but not efficiency. The best machine, artificial machine, in terms of efficiency, even now, is the Hopfield network. Because why? Let's take the Boltzmann machine, for instance. Boltzmann machine multiplies the diversity by 2 or 3 times, the diversity of the Hopfield network. Well, it's a gain, but not very, well, very strong. But the weights, the ages are weighted. They are no longer binary like this. They have weights. And you need bits to represent weights. And in a Boltzmann machine, you need more bits. Let's say 3 or 4 times more bits than in a new Hopfield network. You understand? So in fact, the true reference today is the Hopfield network in terms of efficiency. And of course, for us, for me in particular, efficiency is one of the first parameters.
Thank you. Any other question? If not, let me thank you again very much for this inspiring talk. Maybe now Xavier Lagrange has a few words on the following steps of the conferences to give.
Yes, thank you, Claude, for this very interesting and very innovative speech. I just have a couple of information. We will have now the coffee break till 11 o'clock. I would ask the session chairs for the first session A to meet me, if it is possible, during the coffee break. I have some information to give to you. And also for authors who have posters in tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. So just to explain, please look at the booklet, the program, and you have for each poster you have a code which is printed just at the same line of the title, for instance P104, and you have the panels have the same number. So please look at the program. Remember the code in the of your poster, and put your poster in the corresponding on the corresponding panel. So now it's time for a coffee break before the first session at 11, and I wish you a good conference. Thank you.